Oh, Mets and Verlander? Wow. The Mets got Verlander too.
They did, yeah. Welcome into WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle, Loyola's premier sports talk radio show, airing every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m., every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. Welcome to another show. I am your host today, Jeffrey Bazzi, alongside my co-host, Jimmy Cody. Jimmy, how's it going? We have a lot of news to get into, but how is everything else otherwise?
Everything was okay. Obviously, I was in M&T Bank Stadium this week to watch the Broncos collapse away another win, which is a weekly tradition. The offense miserable as always. So, I actually had a great time at the game with my friends, and you were there too. So I don't know if you had a good time or not, but it was definitely an exciting end to the game for a game that was.
I mean, for a
very
10-9 game, I thought it was a thriller.
Yeah, but the fourth quarter was fun.
It was. There was turnovers, some sacks.
Big plays.
One thing I love too, and I don't know if you noticed, is that game flew by.
Yes.
I checked my phone
Yes.
and it's halftime. It's like 2:15.
All the other games were like so slow, which was nice because you could see the ending because they have like red zone on it, all these TVs.
And they
around.
kept checking
Yeah.
in, and I was talking to our friends who were at the Titans-Eagles game, and their game was going very slow.
Oh, yeah.
I remember it was maybe 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter of the Broncos-Ravens, and I look at the Titans-Eagles.
Halftime.
They're, I
They're
don't
just
know,
getting out.
8 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah, because
They're like 45 minutes behind.
when they were at halftime, I remember like when they got to halftime, I remember looking, it was very close to the fourth quarter for us. And I was like, oh my God.
And there weren't a lot of penalties in the game either, at least
No.
early on.
There was only 3 that I could.
Right. I think there were 2 in the first half, and that was it.
Yeah, there were 3.
It felt very relaxing. It didn't feel like a stressed game. I mean, for an outsider, but for insiders like you, it might be different. But
Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it stress free. That's not the words I would use to describe that.
I just felt like they were going through the motions.
Yeah, well, there were definitely a lot of guys going through the motions out there, but obviously, like point of the weekend, I think we're trying to make here is a lot of great football action, and I think there was a lot of good games this weekend that people enjoyed. Let's start off with the Jets and Vikings because we talked a lot about that. Jeff, I don't really know what to say, but the Jets offense, like, what is LaFleur doing on those 2 goal line stands? Like, I really thought that, like, you get 8 chances at the end zone and you're on the half-yard line for 2 of them. Why not QB sneak?
Yeah. I don't know.
You're literally a half yard, go straight.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. And that's ultimately what cost them the game. I thought they did a pretty good job too of holding it with their defense in the second half. Like I didn't think this was the best game, but I thought their defense gave them a chance in the end to be successful, especially when they're putting up field goals. In the second half specifically is what I'm talking about, the Jets defense. I have to say though, I sat here and I expected a lot more from the Jets defense. I didn't expect 27, but it's good to see them only give up 7 in the second half, especially when the Jets didn't even have a touchdown until the fourth quarter.
Right. And the Vikings D was giving up so many yards. How many yards did they give up total?
I know that's the worst part too. And then you also got Mike White who had 2 picks, and it's really disappointing, obviously, when he turns the ball over. But the fact of the matter is quarterback's a problem for them, and it's their biggest problem. And it is really killing this team. It was nice to see that guy, Zonovan Knight. That was his name.
Zonovan Knight.
Zonovan Knight, who really came out of nowhere. Obviously, they had James Robinson, Michael Carter did not play. But James Robinson was there. He didn't really get the ball much. And then as we know, Breece Hall was hurt. So this is really like the 5th or maybe the 6th running back that they have, because they also have Ty Johnson. But at the end of the day, he was really productive out of the backfield and gave them a good chance to win in this game, but just could not get in the end zone at the end of the game. That's really the story here for the Jets. And there's no other way to say it. It's just a game that I think the Jets really could have had and
could have used it too.
They could have used it too, because they got lucky that a lot of other teams lost. The Dolphins lost. The Patriots obviously lost this week. The Chargers lost.
I mean, those are the teams that they're going to have to beat out.
Those are the teams
for a playoff
spot. Worry about, and lucky for that. And now they're going to have to. Honestly, there's a couple newcomers into that fight, in the AFC that we'll talk about later. But just the point is for the Jets, just a disappointing game. I feel like what I feel like about the Jets. They can never win the big regular season game when things are going right.
Right. The
only feels that way. when they had Todd Bowles, the same thing happened.
The only
They didn't
time I
win
got that
game in
vibe was the
Buffalo.
Buffalo game this year when they won the home game.
Yes,
That
but
was like the one
also-
time.
I'm talking about when they finally get the success going, because that was like the Jets wake up party, right? Beating Buffalo, especially after they just
I think
lost.
people started to take them a little more seriously.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there was definitely a side that, didn't think the Jets were really that legit. And, when they did win that game, I think it definitely opened some eyes. But this was one they definitely could have had. I mean, the Vikings again, 10-2. I can't say enough how much I really don't think highly of this team. The offense is okay. They got a lot of good skill players. We know that. But this defense is a nightmare. Oh my God. For the Jets not to get in, it's just so bad. So bad. They should have
Right.
had the
They
game.
were doing a pretty good job coming back into the game because they got down pretty good, but you're right. They just couldn't get in the end zone when they had to. And again, for Minnesota, they're just in these close games and they've been winning all of them for the most part. But it just concerns you with them because they played the Eagles and the Cowboys and they didn't really look good at all in both of those games. And I think that is kind of the measuring stick that people are going off of right
yeah,
now.
Absolutely. I mean,
And
those two teams look like the best right now.
the Cowboys game was definitely an eye popper just because I think it was middle of the season. Both teams are coming in pretty hot and they got crushed. And some people think it was a dud. Some people don't think it was a dud, but they just find a way to keep squeaking by.
The problem is, it's like, does it become a dud when you do it twice?
Right. Because the first one, the Eagles one, I don't know. Do you
The
think
Eagles won their offense looked absolutely
the
horrible.
defense was okay?
I can get through. One you can sell
It's
me
also
on.
week 2. It's hard to tell
Week
how that
3.
team is.
Was it week 3?
It was 2.
It was 2. It was okay. All right, but that was bad, really bad.
And they've beaten every other team that they've played, and they've had some good wins. I mean, they beat Buffalo and Buffalo. I mean, you can say what you want about that. They found a way to win that game.
That's true. That's their best win. But I just see a lot.
They've taken care of business,
I
but
see constant flaws in this team, especially on
Yeah.
their defensive end, and they got a little lucky. I think that the Jets' offense wasn't as great as it could have been. I think that was the Jets' historic.
they definitely missed a lot of
opportunities.
chances.
That's all you can say for the Jets, between 2 interceptions and not being able to get into the end zone. I mean, Braxton Berrios should have had that catch. No other way to say it. All right, so moving on, let's talk about the other New York team. We have the Giants and the Commanders going into a 2020 tie with one another. Just because for some reason we still have ties in the NFL, which sucks, but it is the way that it is. Listen, both these teams in overtime, I thought had chances to win the game, and then both the time or throughout the game, they both had chances to win the game. The Giants had the lead in the fourth quarter, and unfortunately, it was a pass from Taylor Heineke to Jahan Dotson that ended up getting Washington to tie, and that was with 1:45 left. So, the Giants still have time on offense to get some more points and get themselves a win. And then they obviously had to kick at the end to get themselves a chance to win, and they couldn't do it.
No, and this is a weird game because Washington came out, kind of set the tone, then New York kind of found their stride and they ended up tying the game back at 10, and then they traded field goals and then they traded touchdowns, and not really one of the teams could really pull away. And then that missed kick at the end definitely hurts because Graham Gano, I feel like, is a guy that's a pretty good kicker. I mean, he's been around for a while and he just came up short. Yeah, this is a game that I think both these teams would have loved to won. And ties are just so weird because I think in most cases, whenever the team ties, if you're a fan of the team, you're like, I don't know, it feels like another loss. But
Yeah,
it's
no,
like there's a missed chance, I think, for both
if it
teams.
ain't a win, it ain't great, right? Like I don't
Yeah.
really know. The Broncos have never tied, so I don't really know how to feel. But I mean, I wouldn't be happy with the tie. That's for sure. And this game is huge for the playoffs too.
Right, and
I
they'll
don't know
play
if-
again too.
Yeah, they do, and they actually got flexed to Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big one.
Yeah, that is going to be a big one. That's in 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, and Washington goes on bye this week, so they'll be rested.
Yeah.
And the Giants play the Eagles, so
Wow, that's rough for the Giants to have.
it's a big stretch for the Giants. If they could get some wins there, they could kind of make it interesting.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Giants here for a second, because let's talk about this remaining schedule. They are now 7-4. Ideally, I think they cannot have more than 7 losses and still get it.
They could probably get in. We'll see. I'm trying to do the math
And
now because they have a
They have
tie.
5 games. Yeah, so they have 5 games left. But the problem is let's look at who they're playing. So they have the Eagles this week at home. Eagles are a 7-point favorite. That's going to be a really tough game for them. Then they play the Commanders Sunday Night Football on the road. 2 division games back to back. That's brutal. But then it gets worse because they play the Vikings in Minnesota 1 o'clock. And even though I'm not a Vikings fan, I'm just going to be honest. I think the Vikings are a better team than the Giants.
Especially at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that's especially at 1 o'clock. Yeah, that 1 o'clock has a lot to do with it. Yeah, if that game was at 8:25 on a Monday, I might take the Giants. But unfortunately, it's at 1 p.m. in Minnesota, and that's not great for them. So we all agree those are 3 really tough games.
And they win them, maybe.
And they win them, maybe. But then they have the Colts, who are coming in. I don't think. I know last night the Colts got blown out, but the Giants seem to play a lot of close games, so I don't know if you can give them the W there, but that looks like their most winnable game. And then they have the Eagles. For their sake, they need to hope that the Eagles are resting the starters because that might be their best chance to win. And they also, I think, need to beat Washington in the next game that they play.
I mean, those are the 3 huge games right there.
Yeah, you need to beat the Eagles once. You need to beat Commanders because you got to remember the Commanders is the most important because it's head to head, right? Like they're both fighting for literally the last playoff spot.
Right, and now with the tie in the first meeting, the second meeting is even bigger.
Exactly. The second meeting is literally going to be what takes the cake.
And they're also trying to hold off the Commanders for one of the wild card spots. Because right now I think the Commanders don't have a wild card spot because I think Seattle jumped in there, but and they don't have the head-to-head against Seattle because Seattle beat them early in the year. So that does not bode well for them either.
The Giants.
The Giants, yes.
I agree. Yeah, no, there's a lot here that does not go the Giants' way. And honestly, even though they are 7-4-1 right now, there is a really high percentage, or not a really high percentage. There's a chance they could not make the playoffs. They got to win these games. And honestly, at the end of the day, I don't know if it's necessarily to call anyone out, but their defense hasn't been great lately. They gave up a lot of points to the Lions. I know they got injuries. They gave up, obviously, Dallas had this surge in the second half on Thanksgiving. And then now we have this where they give up, a big play in the fourth quarter, and that ultimately cost them the win. They have got, and they're going to be playing all these teams, the Eagles, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, they're going to be going down the field. Same thing for the Commanders game. They obviously have Terry McLaurin. He's going to be going down the field. The Vikings. I mean, do I even need to say?
I don't think you do.
Jefferson? Yeah, that's going to be a problem. And the Colts. We'll see what happens in that game because the Colts might be tanking at that point. But realistically, the Giants have their work cut out for them. They need to win. I think at least 3 of these games to lock it in, but I mean they got to win 2.
Yeah, they can certainly get it done because they're right in the thick of it. It almost feels like they just need one win to kind of, I don't know, get the juices flowing again.
If they can beat the Eagles at home, that would be huge for them. But I don't know if they can. I really don't. I think they would have to play honestly a nearly perfect game, offensively, no turnovers, and they'd also need to play a really perfect game defensively too, because. Listen, the Eagles are getting the ball no matter if you score or not, right? And they're going to keep putting up points because they got a really good offense. Jalen Hurts is having a great season right now. And honestly, we'll talk about the Eagles in a little bit, but I mean, their offense obviously very good. Jalen Hurts, kind of, I think a backdoor MVP candidate, honestly. He's not getting the respect I think he should deserve.
Yeah.
I really don't think. I mean, he really has improved a lot since last year. I don't think there's any question about that. And it's nice that they gave him weapons to do so.
Right.
But from the Giants standpoint, I mean, these are going to be some tough.
Well, it's funny because we've been talking all about the Giants and how they kind of let this one slip away, missed opportunity. Do you feel the same way for the Commanders? Because they were kind of coming in the opposite way. They were kind of surging. They came out of nowhere and got to 7-5.
I do agree with that, Jeff. This is a little bit on both sides.
I guess it doesn't sting as much because they still have one more game against Dallas. This is the Commanders. They did beat the Eagles already. They split the Eagles 1-1 this year. And they have the tie there. And they got the home game against the Giants coming up. And I don't know who else they play, but I feel like they've put themselves in good position if they can just try to get to 10 wins. Oh, so they play San Francisco.
Yeah, the Commanders have a fairly
and Cleveland with Watson. We'll see how that goes. But
yeah, no, they have a tough schedule, the Commanders.
Also, the Giants do have a game in hand because of the bye week with the Commanders. So, yeah.
But if the Giants lose this week to the Eagles, they'll be tied.
Right. NFC wildcard wasn't really a big storyline, but I think it's getting more interesting
No,
now.
Giants, Commanders, Seahawks. Who's gonna get there? Somebody's got to get there.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the game that took place here in Baltimore. Obviously, the story of the game, no doubt about it, is Lamar Jackson getting injured and Tyler Huntley having to come in. So I want to hear your thoughts kind of on the Lamar Jackson injury thing.
It was very mysterious. So
It
I didn't
was.
even notice until
I didn't notice either.
Christian pointed it out to me. He goes, "Yeah, is Lamar not out there?" I go, "Yeah, why is he not out there?" I just thought maybe he was out for one play and Huntley had to come in because maybe
Well, they changed the quarters, remember?
yeah. So I didn't even notice that because I must have looked away
Well,
or something.
yeah.
But yeah, it's mysterious. I didn't even like see him get hurt because it's not like he was down on the ground and there's no one attending to him.
Well, yeah, so I think it was I think it was a third down sack. So it was a punt. So that was why when he came back out, it wasn't the quarters. I'm sorry, it was a punt. So
It could have been the quarters because it
Broncos-
did say he was injured at the end of the quarter.
Okay, so the Broncos got a sack, and then Lamar ran off the field. He didn't look hurt. He wasn't down or anything. Like he just never came back.
And then I saw him
that-
walk to the tunnel.
Well, when I saw Huntley come back out on the field, I saw the blue tent was up on the Ravens sideline. And I'm like, that's got to be like where Lamar is, because you had
And it
that
was.
whole defensive possession went by, and you had no idea Lamar wasn't.
Right, you'd have no idea.
you
There
didn't
must have
know.
been 10 minutes that have
Yeah,
gone by.
Yeah, a lot of time went by in between of like Lamar out on the field to figuring out that Lamar was injured. Additionally, I thought Tyler Huntley played good. Obviously, the drive at the end of the game was very good. He was completely aided by a dumb play by Pat Surtain on a pass interference to Andrews. But at the same time, the Broncos did not get the situational stop, and the Ravens put themselves in a position to get a touchdown on that last drive. And once they got down to the 2 yard line or whatever it was, I kind of felt like it was kind of not going to work out for the Broncos. But the worst part is that drive went 91 yards on our defense. And at the same time, as much I do obviously want to blame the offense sucks. We'll get into that for a second. If it's like if Mahomes had the chance to win the game at the end of the game, like that's who the Chiefs would want out there. I'd argue for our team, we would want to have a lead by 6 points and have our defense out there. Like that was a position we want to be. Obviously, it's not great because we only gave up 10 points, but we just so happened to falter in the last 4.5 minutes. That's really kind of the collapse there on the Broncos end.
Yeah, it's just tough because the defense played so well throughout the game, and then it's just unfortunate that one possession where they actually had to really get a stop to kind of ice it, and they did not. That was unfortunately what happened.
Penalties, man. The penalties have been the story for this team, and we saw it there.
Well, and the other thing I was going to bring up too, I think Baltimore had 2 4th downs where they were 4th and 1, 4th and 2, I think, on each one, and they got both of them. But I mean, Denver got the 4th down both times, and they were unable to get off the field there.
Well, I point more so towards the Andrews Surtain play because that was 3rd and long, and Surtain knows better. He just does. Like, you know how it's like you expect more from a guy like that. Like, more than likely,
He's one of your top guys.
Yeah, more than likely, Surtain. I don't know recently. Coming into the year, there was a chance that he could be an All-Pro, and he still has a chance to do that. I would put him in like a top 4, top 5 of corners right now. But God, I mean, that was the biggest play, and I understand that he's very physical, like he's a big guy, and like I actually would like him to be on Andrews. He was on him like a glove. Problem was he just didn't turn around.
I feel like Andrews wasn't really a factor.
No,
and I know having Huntley in there is obviously not going to help this cause, but
he had one. Well, his first catch came when Huntley came in the game. Right?
Yeah,
when they had that,
it's kind of a little chunk play. Yeah,
22-yard pass because nobody was around was around Mark Andrews, and that was kind of how he kind of got into the game. But no, I agree with you. Mark Andrews, who's really their big receiver, like he didn't really have a big effect on the game by any means. But let's talk about this Broncos offense, Jeff, because what do you like? You watched this team yesterday. You were there. What do you think's the problem?
So I thought actually when they came out, I thought that opening drive was really good.
Yeah,
I know they did not get 7, but the 3 wasn't bad.
Should have had 7.
I think the only thing I would disagree on that opening drive was I didn't really like what they did on that third down because I don't know why they ran it because it was like 3rd and 5.
Yeah,
Like,
it was.
why are you not throwing there?
Especially when you have a $242 million quarterback that you're paying. You would think maybe on third down you want to do that. And Jeff, I am glad that you brought up the third down because they ran a lot on third down.
And I also think you're talking about the offense overall. What I saw, I felt like they didn't really get much on first down. I feel like they would try to go up the middle with Latavius Murray more than half the time, and he would get maybe 2 or 3 and nothing more. And I think that's a problem because then you get the second down and 7. You're like, okay, we could try to throw here and get it, or we try to run it again and maybe set up like a little 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. But I don't know. I think the key there is you just got to get more on the first down. It's not like you can just try to, I don't know, punch it over the middle for a run for 3 yards. I mean, that could do you some good, but I don't think it can do you good most of the time.
Listen, it also
It was also just a punt fest. I mean, there was a stretch, I think, in the first half. There must have been, what, 6 or 7 punts in a row?
Yeah, so
because it's not like the Ravens were doing anything. Lamar, when he was healthy in the first quarter, he looked bad
no,
too.
he did not look good at all. I completely agree with you. You know what I thought was kind of like the turning point for the Broncos when Cortland Sutton came out because they lost like probably their best. I don't want to say best actually, because I thought Judy has been playing better lately. Probably one of their better receiving options, right? Like going from Sutton to Judy, like that's a good like kind of situation. But the fall off after that is huge, especially too when your tight ends get worked in the game. Like that was a great catch to set up in the fourth quarter. I mean, Russ had a beautiful throw to Greg Dulcich for 30 yards. He escaped the pocket, made a beautiful throw down the field. I was like, oh my God, like at that point it was 9-3 and Broncos literally just needed to score. And let's talk about that drive because that was their last offensive possession before the field goal opportunity at the end. So second to last. And they pass on second down and they pass on third down in the fourth quarter. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with it.
Especially on the other side of the field.
Yeah, I would have ran it personally, but
I would have too.
The other thing I was going to mention too, you talk about the offense. I thought Wilson on the run actually made some nice throws.
No, that's the thing. He was making some nice throws. He doesn't make the situational throws. That's the problem. He doesn't understand.
I think he did a good job of picking and choosing when to kind of get out of the pocket because you want to sit back there and trust the O-line that they're going to block for you. But there were sometimes I felt like he just kind of coasted out to the left or the right, and he was throwing some dimes. I thought Dulcich was great, though.
Dulcich was good.
He was kind of the one guy that kind of came out of nowhere. He didn't really think he'd be a huge factor, just considering they had Judy and. I mean, I thought Sutton was going to play, but he didn't really play that much, and then he got hurt. Yeah, so it was nice to see him step up.
I thought Judy had a decent effect too. Like,
there's some chunk plays in the third quarter there.
Chunk plays
and down the field. Yeah.
It's just that this offense can never seem to get touchdowns, no matter what happens. Also, too, I'm glad you brought up Russ in the pocket because for a little while now, I've been saying I think he still has some quickness that people don't really realize. He just doesn't use it at all. Oh my God, he is no threat to run up against the defense whatsoever. The only time he ran was to get them into field goal range at the end. Well, not field goal range, but an attempt at field goal range at the end.
Yeah. I don't know if he's going to try to run every time unless they design runs for him.
I mean, I don't think that they should. I don't think that they should. If you want my honest opinion, like I don't think they need to be like Lamar Jackson, but I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to add a little sprinkle to add to the offense. I think it's definitely there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And on that drive that they had after the Dulcich big play and they're in Ravens territory, they obviously run those 2 passes. I don't know if you saw this, Jeff, but Kendall Hinton was wide open on a slide.
Yeah, he was. There were some fans in our section who were Ravens fans. They said, yeah, Hinton was wide
Kendall Hinton was wide open, and Russ didn't see him. It would have been a first down. I mean, that would have taken, and the Ravens would have had to use their timeouts and probably another minute comes off the clock, maybe, depending on when Harbaugh started to use his timeouts.
Right. The other thing I didn't even bring up was Baltimore. They threw 2 picks in the second half.
Yeah. So obviously,
and the Broncos did get 3 out of it. So I guess okay, not bad. But The other one, I think they ended up
Yeah,
punting.
both of which were by Justin Simmons, and then
Well, the one was off the Philly special that they
the
tried.
Oh my god, let's talk about that Philly special. So I mean, that was the worst
I
assignment.
think it was on a second down play.
It was horrible. That was the worst play call I have ever seen in my life.
And we talked a lot about the
remember-
Broncos, but the Ravens play calling was
Oh, yeah, it was atrocious. That was the worst play call I ever saw in my life. And I remember when the Giants ran the QB sneak last year on whatever down it was, near their own goal line. But I just, okay, so you have a backup quarterback. What's the point of throwing with Crochet? I mean, what are you doing? And also, too, that was the worst play design because I don't know if you noticed, our entire defensive backfield was standing right next to the receiver. There was 4 guys over
There were literally 4 guys. I thought it was 2 or 3. It was
Simmons,
4 guys.
Simmons, Surtain, Kareem Jackson, and our other quarter, K'Wan Williams.
Anyone could have
there.
jumped up in the air and have caught it.
Yeah, Simmons just was the only one he was the guy who jumped. So that was why.
It's funny too, because I actually thought it was a pretty good looking throw in the air, but I didn't actually realize how many Broncos defensive backs were back there until the replay showed it.
Breaking news. We got breaking news.
Oh,
The New York Yankees have announced they're signing Brian Cashman to a 4-year contract extension. So we're going to bring on Eddie Stank in a little bit. We have to ask him about this when he comes on.
wow.
I'm very interested to hear what he has to say. But also, I want
And same with you too.
Yeah,
I'm curious about your
we'll have
thoughts.
a lot to say as far as that goes. Actually, he's with us right now. Eddie, are you there?
Yes, how are you doing, Jimmy?
I'm good. How are you? So we had just some breaking news come into the After the Whistle studio here. I'm not sure if you saw it from Bob Nightingale.
I actually did not know.
Oh, Brian Cashman has been extended for 4 years.
I did see that. So I don't even expect him to go. Yeah.
No. Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
The Yankees have brought themselves to one of the lowest points I think of my entire life, honestly. So we saw the Mets announce Justin Verlander today, pay him 2 years, $43 million a year, I think, and then we saw the Phillies announce Trey Turner, and then the Yankees actually have the balls today to come out and announce Brian Cashman. Right after those 2 teams announced that, I was sick to my stomach, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing all these other teams making moves. I'm seeing the Yankees sitting here with their hands folded. I don't even know what they're doing. I mean, like, there's other moves to make besides Judge. Like, that's the thing that I don't understand. Like, I feel my concern is with this team is they're gonna be so focused on Judge, right? No matter if they get him or don't get him, they're gonna have nothing else in place. Like, they don't look like they're like aggressive in any way.
No, that's exactly what I agree with. I really agree with you. But I think what's going to happen this offseason, if we do keep Judge, we're going to keep Judge, and there's not going to be really any major changes. Maybe like Gleyber will get traded and we'll get a reliever and a prospect, but like nothing that crazy I don't think is coming. I saw we're meeting with Rodon. I saw we're interested in Brian Reynolds from the Pirates. But it's the same thing every offseason. Next year was Olson and Correa. The year before, a few years back was Harper and
Machado.
Seager last offseason too. All these guys were quote unquote interested in, and then we never get.
All right. So additionally, I want to bring up another topic. Jeffrey, this one is obviously very important for you. But really quickly, since we're on the topic of baseball, Jeff, how excited are you about Trey Turner?
I'm pretty thrilled. I feel like this has kind of been inevitable in the sense that there's been so many tweets and so many reports just coming out saying, oh, Phillies, Trey Turner, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if and when, and it finally happened today. But I think it's huge because it definitely fills a need with Gene Segura leaving, and I feel like he's a perfect guy to kind of fill the void because he's a young star, and he's not really too young anymore, but he's still young in the sense that he's not much like, I don't know, older compared to these other stars. But yeah, I love the move, and we gave him the bag, so I really hope he can live up to the hype because he's been really good ever since he got to LA, and he was pretty good in Washington. I feel like LA kind of turned the corner, and hopefully he can do the same in Philly.
So, Stank, what do you think about the Trey Turner to the Phillies move? I have to be honest with you, as a Yankees fan, I'm straight up jealous. There's no other way for me to say it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm jealous as well. I think Trey Turner, like a lot of teams get worried about signing players long term in MLB, like rightfully so. Like you see a lot of players get hurt, a lot of players play fine. But I honestly think Trey Turner is probably one of like the safest signings, honestly, long term. He had a little injury problems at the beginning of his career, but he's been healthy for the last few years now. whenever he's been on the field, he's always been an outstanding baseball player in all aspects of the game: fielding, running the bases, contact hitting, got a little bit of pop. Always hits over 300. Like that's just a guy you want on your baseball team.
He's a five-tool player. He's a five-tool player.
Exactly. And we're always wondering though, is he gonna play second on the Phillies and they're gonna keep Stott at short, or what's gonna look like in that infield?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I haven't done too much digging into that. That is definitely something that is worth
They gotta
bringing
put him
up.
at shorts.
I would think so. I think,
You're not paying Trey Turner to play second base.
yeah,
think so.
I would think the same. Stott, I think, will be the one that moves.
Because second base is a position where, listen, you can, like, if Stott is there as like a defensive, like that, he's gonna be the defensive guy there. Because Stott is not he's not Trey Turner at the plate. Like, we don't have to sit here and say and act like he is. But you can also get other guys who can play second, who can like be utility guys, and Stott can kind of like work in and out. Like, think of like a playoff scenario, right? Where you're making all these defensive kind of changes. I just think he fits better at second base.
Stott did play actually something about 47 games at second base last year. I didn't know that. I thought he only played short and played pretty well. So yeah, that would probably be the most logical. He didn't make it.
That's true, actually. I forgot about that because Segura was injured for a while. Yeah.
So, all right. So from one Philly sport to another, let's talk about the Eagles here, guys. Yesterday was what you guys had perceived to be your biggest test, right? Like, this was the game. Like, you're a little nervous. Derrick Henry and the great Ryan Tannehill are coming to town. I understand. Very scary when Ryan Tannehill shows up at your team's stadium. Yeah, everyone's afraid of Ryan Tannehill. But I mean, listen, the Eagles just blew him out of the water. I mean, what did you think, Ed? I'll let you go first.
Honestly, who was honestly like the most penalized on our offensive line has been in like a game I can remember ever. Jason Kelsey had 2 penalties. That was insane. Mulaney was picking up penalties. Dickerson in 1 or 2. The fact that we put up 35 points with the like 100 whatever yard penalties, I didn't even look for maybe 6, but the amount that we still put up 35 points with those penalties. I guess that's a really good thing, honestly. Our offense was great yesterday. AJ Brown backed up all his talks. And yeah, I was really excited about the Eagles yesterday for the most part. The defense was fantastic. The D-line finally looked great. Got to the quarterback, shut down Derrick Henry, like shut down this notion about that you would beat us just by running the ball, pounding against us. And I think it would be a big failure if the Eagles think about the NFC now, especially after Jimmy G being ruled out for the season last night.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I kind of forgot about the 49ers. We were going to talk about them in a little bit as the show went on, but yeah, let's talk about that now. I think there's no doubt, like, Jeff, the biggest competition at this point outside of the Niners. We'll see what happens with Brock Purdy, but played pretty good yesterday, I thought. But let's see what happens when it comes to the Eagles versus the Cowboys, right? Like, those two teams look like the big dogs right now.
I mean, yeah, that's obviously going to be by far the biggest competition. And we play them in week 16. So that's obviously going to be a huge measuring stick, not only for us, but for them as well. Because the first meeting, you can put a little asterisk next to it because they did not have Prescott. And we took advantage without them having Prescott. So we took care of business there. But I think the Cowboys are definitely the biggest threat. And the only other team I would put in there would probably be the Vikings, just because they're 10-2. But we've seen how the Vikings have looked against the Cowboys and the Eagles. And we were talking about this earlier in the show, and they did not really play well in either one of those games, especially the Cowboys game. But I mean, in a playoff setting, you never know. Maybe there's a little bit of surprise there, but I think the Eagles and the Cowboys are probably the 2 biggest threats to come out of the NFC right now.
All right, so let me ask you both something. I'll start with you, Ed. If Odell went to the Cowboys, would that change you in any way? Like, do you still think like the Eagles are ahead of the Cowboys, or would you say on par, or what would you say?
I think right now they're pretty close. I think, yeah. I have to see first. We have to see Odell come back. That would definitely make me nervous because honestly, we've seen the Cowboys get the top seed. We've seen them have better records at this point. But I honestly think this might be the best Dallas team that like I've at least watched in my life. Like they're really good and they're really underrated. That defense is legit, and they can put up points and all sorts. I'm very nervous about them, honestly.
Yeah, I like the way they use the offense with Tony Pollard. So Jeff, how about you? What are your thoughts on the Odell?
Yeah, I think if Odell went to the Cowboys, it'd be a nice pickup. I don't think it would change my view too much. Maybe they close the gap a little bit, but I still feel like these teams are very on par with each other. I feel like they play similar styles, but I feel like, yeah, the Cowboys have looked really good all year. I feel like the only time they really looked bad, I mean, week one was a bad look, but then Prescott went down and all that, and then they lost that Eagles game. The only time they've looked bad was the defense in Green Bay was the only time that the defense has looked really bad. But other than that, they've pretty much looked flawless. I feel like they're kind of hitting on all cylinders right now, and I think that's scary coming from an Eagles fan.
Yeah, I agree with both what you said. I think these teams are very close to one another for sure. So let's talk about that Jimmy G injury for the 49ers. Jeff, how much of an effect do you think this is going to have? Because let's face it, Garoppolo was having a pretty nice season, in my opinion.
Oh, we were talking about it on Friday. He was having the type of season where no one really was paying attention to him too much ever since he kind of came in for Trey Lance, and he's just been quietly balling. But I think this is going to be a big injury that's going to affect them because Brock Purdy is kind of this unknown. I mean, if you follow him in college, you might know how he plays and all that. I didn't really know who he was, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Iowa State.
I didn't really watch him. Maybe I did, just didn't even know at the time. But now that he's coming in as the starter, and not to mention, I think his first start will be against Tom Brady. So we'll see how he deals with all that hoopla or whatever you want to call it.
God.
But
he's going against Tom Brady first game. Oh my God, that's gonna be rough for.
I think
Brady.
the story here is, can they hold on to the division? Because while they did win yesterday, I mean, losing your QB obviously does not help. And you have Seattle right there at 7-5, right behind you, and they play head to head in 2 weeks. So that's going to be a huge game. I think that's actually going to be the one game they really have to win, because I think they can win their other games. Just because I feel like I trust the rest of their roster. I feel like they have a really good roster.
They do.
But I mean, when you don't have your QB though, I mean, it can be tough.
So Ed, the one thing that I want to say before I go back to you is this 49ers defense is so built to win now. I mean, I thought they did a fantastic job against the Dolphins yesterday. So I'm really interested to hear what you think about the Garoppolo injury and how this is going to affect them going forward.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because that's such a tough question because the 49ers are such a system offense from Shanahan where I feel like you don't need a great quarterback to succeed. As we've seen, Jimmy Garoppolo I think is a better win percentage than Steve Young and Joe Montana as 49er. So you don't need to be great quarterbacks running that system, but that defense is legit, man. They shut down the Dolphins like we hadn't seen. Like I've been so high on Tua all year.
That was worst game.
Tua was not ready for that. Tua was not ready for that defense. That's what I would think. And
he got eaten alive.
But they probably still want to play off here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what they do at quarterback, what Shanahan is able to do. It seems like he does a pretty good job of working with backup quarterbacks. So that's going to be something. Yeah, that's true. He does a good job of finding guys who fit his system, whether it was like Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard. Like he always just finds these random ways to win. All right, so we're going to take a quick break here. Eddie, any last words before you go?
I don't think so. Excited to watch the game tonight. It's gonna be a good one. It's always fun seeing Evans and Lattimore.
Any thoughts on the Los Angeles Chargers game versus the Raiders yesterday?
Yeah, dude. The Chargers are such a joke. I don't know how that team year in year out. It's just players and names on the field, and they just can't win. Like you got to be beating the Raiders at this point.
Yeah, the Chargers are always going to find a way to do what the Chargers do.
Chargers going to Charger.
Yeah, and that's fail. Yeah, seeing the Chargers next to the Broncos always makes me feel good about myself.
Welcome back to WLOY, Loyola Radio, streaming online at WLOY.org and Campus TV channel 111.1. This is After the Whistle with Jeffrey Bazzi and Jimmy Cody. We were talking all things NFL before the break. We're going to pick up from that. And we have one more game to talk about. And it's a pretty notable one, Jimmy. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals, they met yesterday for the first time since the AFC Championship game last season. And again, the Bengals found a way to beat Kansas City. I feel like they kind of have their number. And this is one team I think that everyone looks at, the Chiefs. They're kind of the team that everyone wants to beat. And the Bengals, at least recently, in our recent memory, they found a way to do it. And they did it again yesterday. And Joe Burrow just keeps balling along. And what did you see from this game? Because it's a game that Kansas City would have loved to get some payback. But Cincinnati said no.
Well, I'll say this. I thought that the Chiefs offense went cold in the fourth quarter. The Bengals defense kind of stepped up when it mattered. Obviously, there was a missed kick that would have tied the game, but the Chiefs were up 24-20, right? Like McPherson kicked that kick. if the Chiefs were really going to put them away, they had to score on that next drive, right? Like you're already only up 4. Like you got to get a touchdown. And they didn't. They didn't score again the rest of the game. And then they had opportunities after that too that they still couldn't take advantage of. They just missed opportunities for the Chiefs offense. They just simply weren't good enough, right? Especially
Yeah.
with the talent that they have.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's a big game in the AFC playoff picture and the big landscape because now Buffalo jumped Kansas City for the 1 seed just because of the tiebreakers. And even the Bengals have kind of asserted themselves. They're actually still not even in first place just because they don't have the tiebreaker over the Ravens. But the way that the Bengals are surging and the Ravens are kind of, I don't know, kind of just coasting along. I feel like the Bengals are a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they not only win the AFC North, but get one of those, I don't know, top 2 seeds. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders.
You know what else is a really, really important thing to talk about with the Bengals? How well they've been running the ball. If we sat here and said at the beginning of the season when they struggled on this show, how they needed to run the ball. That was with Joe Mixon, however. Joe Mixon didn't play. They had Samaje Perine, who's a pretty good backup running back.
Yeah.
Also went to Oklahoma.
Didn't look like a backup yesterday.
If you want to hear something crazy, Samaje Perine was actually the starter at Oklahoma. And then Joe Mixon is the starter.
Wow.
That kind of weird.
Yeah, that is weird. Now they're teammates.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. But he had a great game yesterday. 21 carries for 106 on the ground. That's 5 yards a carry. You'll take that all day. And that was exactly what they got out of the run game. And the Bengals, listen, they don't win flashy. They just win. I mean, I felt like ever since that New Orleans game, this offense has just snapped and it has just clicked on. There was something about Jamar and Burrow going back down to the bayou that just woke them up.
Yeah, I feel like we were hitting the panic button a lot early in the year because they just looked really bad. And everyone's like, oh, maybe they weren't as good as they actually were. But now they're proving that they're going to be around. And yeah, I feel like ever since that game down in New Orleans, they've just been hitting on everything. So big win for the Bengals, and for the Chiefs, they better watch out because if they give up seeding and they fall into a bad matchup, I mean, look out. And we saw it last year. Cincinnati came out of nowhere and beat them at their own place. So sure that they don't want to go back to the jungle later in January. So we'll see how that plays out in the AFC. But let's turn our attention to the college football playoff. And I'm not sure. Yeah. And for those who do not know, the college football playoff was revealed yesterday. The top 4 teams in this order are Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. And so that means that Georgia will play Ohio State while Michigan will face TCU. And
what day are they playing this year? Like, do they know when yet? Or
so they're playing New Year's Eve.
I was gonna say because New Year's is a Sunday.
So yes, New Year's Eve falls on a Saturday. And so I believe that the Michigan TCU game is the first game at 4:00. I believe it's the Fiesta Bowl this year that gets to host that one. And then the Peach Bowl is hosting the Georgia Ohio State game. I think it's at 8:00. So they're 4 hours apart.
All right. So those are the 4 teams.
Well, I guess right off the bat, do you agree with the 4 teams?
No, I don't agree with the 4
No,
teams.
okay.
TCU belongs nowhere near that playoff.
Okay.
They belong nowhere near that playoff. I'm sorry. The Big 12 was not good this year. The Big 12 was not good this year. They couldn't even run through the Big 12. I bet if you picked any of those other 3 teams, they would have all ran through the Big 12. You put Alabama in the Big 12, they would have won undefeated. That's for sure. I just don't think that the TCU was that good. Honestly, they needed to. You can't lose to Kansas State. Alabama wouldn't lose to Kansas State.
And it's funny, actually, because Alabama is playing Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, they'll probably destroy them. But also, they probably won't play like a lot of their guys. Like I'm sure a lot of them will go to the NFL, right? Like Bryce Young probably expected to go. Will Anderson expected to go. Doesn't matter. Like obviously, Alabama has a lot of great players. And that's also Kansas State is Super Bowl. They credit to them. They played really well.
And they got it done.
They got it done. But at the same time, too, you're Kansas State. You're not even, you're not like an undefeated team here. They had 3 losses. They had a nice season, but I mean, whew. But also, too, I mean, you could talk about TCU losing, but also let's talk about USC losing. They also lost, too, and they lost bad. Caleb Williams getting hurt was like the end of that game for them. And he just was not right.
It felt like the wheels came off the track in the second half.
They were up at one point. I mean,
right.
14-3.
And we're talking about the USC-Utah game. That was the Pac-12 title game, which happened Friday night, and Utah won. Actually beat them for the second time. Utah beat USC for the second time. So
I mean, the
knocked USC out of the playoffs.
The third and fourth quarter was just where Utah just absolutely just ripped through that USC defense. I mean, really the second quarter too is where it started because
And I think it kind of shows you that if USC's offense is not really kicking into gear, they don't really have a shot.
I completely agree there. No balance whatsoever. And that's something that, I just that's a problem for them. They got to be better that way. And Lincoln Riley's constantly had that problem where he just does not have any defense.
Yeah. So I was going to take a little bit of a different approach to the top four because I actually think they got it right. And it's tough because there's two sides. One thing is you want the four best teams in there. And do I think the four best teams are in there? No, I don't. But I feel like the four deserving teams are in there. And it's tough because you look at Alabama, who's definitely a team in consideration. They did not make it, and they had 2 losses. And then you look at TCU, they had 1 loss, and you're 100% right, Jimmy, when you bring up how the Big 12 is not very good. And while they did beat those teams, it's not like they kind of just coasted by and they were blowouts. I mean, they were close games against Kansas State, who they lost to, but they beat them, I think, earlier in the year. And then they played, I think, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Kansas. But I just felt like with 1 loss and the fact that they were in a conference title game, I think that kind of put them a little bit over the edge when you talk about Alabama. And I think that's kind of why they got in.
Maybe, but I just look at the teams head to head compared to each other. I'm big on 4 best teams. Like I don't
Right. And I agree that Bama is a better team.
Yeah, let's look at their 2 losses. They lost to Tennessee, right? It was 1 possession game. And
Right.
And they lost to LSU on a 2-point conversion.
Right. I think the problem with the Bama loss to LSU is that it kind of looks bad now, just considering how they looked against Georgia. And
it absolutely looks bad.
I don't think that played really into their favor, but
kind of peaking then. And listen, they still put up 30 points against Georgia. Like
no
I
slouch.
don't know if
Yeah.
put up 30 points against Georgia. I can tell you.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's putting up 30 against
Yeah,
Georgia.
I don't know if anybody is. And also too, like, why does the Big Ten deserve 2 teams? And what's that reason? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
realistically, like,
It's the first time it's ever happened.
yeah, you got Michigan and Ohio State. They're both towers above everybody else. And okay, you can throw Penn State and like a slop like below them, but the rest of the conference is garbage, right? Like Purdue won the West.
Right. And they weren't even first the whole year. It was really Illinois. Illinois was kind of penciled in and they blew it.
The rest of the division is Rutgers, Maryland, and Michigan State and Indiana.
Right. And the
So,
West
like,
had some
what are we
teams that
doing?
are disappointing. I
Yeah.
mean, Nebraska's been a dumpster fire. Wisconsin had a disappointing year.
like, there's a
Minnesota.
lot of bad teams in that conference. I mean, really, like, I don't know if we should be like, oh wow, yeah, great job. But then it's like, who deserves to be in? I don't know.
Well, that's why I'm excited for when they go to 12 teams, because then we'll be debating who gets 12 and 13 or whatever. But
Good point, Jeff.
that's
but-
2 years down the road.
But let's talk about something else because there's a huge storyline, especially concerning Ohio State. Their wide
Right.
receiver, obviously, Jackson Smith Njaba.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like,
he-
I don't know how to pronounce it
He's
in Jigba.
declaring, he's declaring for the NFL draft. And he's not going to play in the college football playoff.
This is the first time, like you
This
said.
is the first time that this has happened. Number one, we obviously saw what happened with Matt Corral last year in the Sugar Bowl, and that was a huge, big deal because he played in the Sugar Bowl, and then got hurt, and everybody said, "Oh, he shouldn't have played. He shouldn't have played. Shouldn't have played." He was like, "I want to play, whatever." It was his prerogative. It's what he decided to do. And this kid's doing the same thing. It's just that his team's competing for a championship. I mean, more than likely. I mean, I don't think that Ohio State can win without him. That's for sure.
Well, and it's weird because we've seen people sit out of these bowl games just because they're going to the
fucking
draft.
Sit out of the Gator Bowl.
But this is the playoff.
Yeah,
I mean, you have a shot to win the whole thing.
yeah.
It's
this
never
is
been seen
literally
before.
what you're playing for. It's supposed to be.
I agree that Ohio State needs him because you can say what you want about how good Marvin Harrison is. He's not just good, he's great. He's a really good receiver. But having a guy like Smith and Jigba in there as your number 2, he's a really strong number 2 because he was kind of like a number 1 last year. I mean, Garrett Wilson was there too, but
Yeah, Garrett Wilson was there.
and Olave was too.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had some loaded receivers obviously last year, and those 2 didn't play, whatever. In the Rose Bowl.
Definitely doesn't help a guy like CJ Stroud either.
No, it does not. But listen to this. If we're gonna have this expansion, what's to say random guys aren't gonna play for every team? Oh, Bryce Young's out. Oh, Stetson Bennett's not playing. Oh, Johnny Manziel's out. Like, if we're just gonna constantly have these star players who we know are gonna be going to the NFL after the season not play, what's the point of expanding? I don't get it. That's just a problem that they're gonna have, right? Like, at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear. Like, these kids don't like the value is not winning a championship. The value is making the NFL. And that is just kind of the problem. Like honestly, at this point, I don't know. Maybe go back to the BCS.
You think they would ever consider
I
that?
don't know, but I mean, I think
The way it's
four-
going,
I
I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, they're obviously moving in the opposite way. I'm just interested to see what the competition is going to look like because we have, when you have all those teams, there's going to be a greater gap, and I feel like we have blowouts now when one plays four. Sometimes when two plays three, there's also a blowout. But we really like we might be getting some really bad games.
Yeah, I think it's just fair to do it just because I feel like it's not as exclusive and you don't have to go undefeated or lose one game. I feel like, I don't know, you lose two, you can get in now, maybe even three. Because there's a lot of good 3-loss teams that are kind of hovering around 10 and 11 and 12.
Yeah, like a Utah, like a
USC,
or Kansas State.
Yeah,
Coach Schneider,
right.
even though he's not there anymore.
Yeah, I am excited though for the New Year's Six games, even the non-playoff games. I think Clemson, Tennessee is kind of a weird matchup. Both teams are orange and they're in the Orange Bowl. I thought that was a fun little factoid, but I think the other one was Penn State, Utah is the Rose Bowl. That should be a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
But I agree though. Back to your original point about the 4 best teams in there. I do not think that the 4 best teams are in there.
That's exactly how I feel, and that's kind of the situation that I look at this in, and it's just a little, I don't know, disappointing. But we'll see what happens in the playoff. Obviously, they got to play the games, right?
Right.
So,
It just sucks we have to wait till New Year's Eve. I mean, today is December 5th. We have to wait 26 days for this.
Yeah, we do. And then bowl season starts the 16th, so we'll see
Right.
what happens.
Can't wait for these bowl games to be advertised in ESPN. We're gonna see I don't even know.
Yeah, you don't need the hometown.
It's any, like, I don't know.
Bowl.
It's any like American company and then some like restaurant and then like a fruit. I feel like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's all these
there's
adjectives just put together.
some random bowls for sure.
Like can't wait to watch the Cure Bowl or whatever it's
The
called.
famous Idaho Potato Bowl. That's always a good one.
That's a
too.
staple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
staple.
The
Well,
Fenway Bowl or whatever
the
it is.
Cheez-It Bowl.
The
too.
is the Pinstripe Bowl back?
The Pinstripe Bowl is probably back. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, unless they got rid of it. I don't know.
The
I
point
don't-
is
I
there's
don't
just
know.
some
Maybe they
funny
might have actually
names.
gotten rid of
The
it.
Lending Tree Bowl.
Yeah, there's a lot of very weird bowls. That's just the way these colleges make money, and at the end of the day, it does apply, or it ends up applying to all these other sports. Like it's kind of what puts money in the schools' pockets, so they're able to fund these other sports. So that's what they got to do. They got to have the bowl games.
Yeah, bowl season's upon us, so we'll see how that plays out as time goes along. But I think unfortunately that's gonna do it for After the Whistle. We'll be back on Friday talking some football. We'll recap the Raiders-Rams Thursday night game.
Also, I want to give a quick shout out to the Loyola men's team. They got 2 games this week. They're playing Hampton on Wednesday, so good luck to them. And they also have Mount St. Mary on Saturday.
Yes, they do. Hopefully they can bounce back after a tough one over the weekend. And then the women, I think, have 2 games as well. So good luck to the women as well. But yeah,
Good luck.
good luck to the basketball teams. Best of luck from all of us here at Loyola. So thank you for listening. We'll be back on Friday and we will see you then. Have a great rest of the week.